They say Nero burned Rome. He didn't. He was miles away when the fire started. He rode back without bodyguards and fought it for 9 days. But here is what they don't tell you. He burned everything else. His mother. His wife. His closest friends. His empire. Himself. And he did it all before he was 30. This is the story of Nero. The last Caesar. The emperor who burned everything. And the one detail nobody mentions is that for the first 5 years, he was extraordinary. Nero didn't take the throne. His mother handed it to him. Agrippina had spent 15 years making this moment possible. She married her own uncle, the Emperor Claudius. She had Nero adopted as heir, pushing aside Claudius's own biological son Britannicus. She controlled the Praetorian Guard through her handpicked prefect Burrus. She hired the most respected philosopher in Rome, Seneca, as Nero's tutor. And when she decided the moment had come, Claudius ate his favorite dish, mushrooms. On the evening of October 13, 54 AD, the Praetorian officer came to the new emperor and asked for the night's official password. Nero was 16 years old. He gave the officer his answer. Optima Mater. The perfect mother. He handed her the password to the entire Roman Empire on his first night as emperor. Within 3 years, he was trying to kill her. But first, something unexpected. The boy was good at this. Even Tacitus, the historian who despised Nero, admitted the truth. The first 5 years of Nero's reign were a genuine success. He restored power to the Senate. He administered the provinces fairly. He gave every citizen of Rome a cash handout. He abolished the treason trials that had terrorized Rome for decades. He reduced taxes. He held a lottery, throwing numbered wooden balls into crowds, where winners could claim horses, slaves, holiday homes. Later historians and emperors would call it the Quinquennium Neronis, the 5 golden years of Nero. Trajan, one of Rome's greatest emperors, said no ruler had ever matched it. But here is what those 5 years actually were. Seneca and Burrus were running the empire. Nero was behind the scenes, drinking with friends in disguise, visiting brothels, writing poetry, playing the lyre. On one particularly rowdy night he came home with 2 black eyes. His advisors had to cover it up. The 5 golden years were not Nero's achievement. They were the achievement of the 2 men keeping him out of the way. And the coins told the story of what was really happening. Agrippina had coins minted showing her face alongside Nero's, the first time in Roman history an imperial woman appeared on the same side of a coin as the emperor. In some versions, her name took precedence over his. She was declaring herself co-ruler in metal. Then the next coin series appeared. Nero in front. Agrippina behind. You could watch the power shift happen in gold. And what caused it was not politics. It was a woman named Act. Nero had fallen in love with a former slave. He wanted to marry her. Agrippina went to war. She bullied. She threatened. She controlled. And in doing so, she pushed Nero further and further from her and toward his advisors. What she didn't understand was that a puppet who stops obeying is not a puppet anymore. On the night of July 18, 64 AD, a fire started near the Circus Maximus. A brazier kicked over. A strong wind blowing. In moments, the wooden slums of Rome caught. It burned for 9 days. 10 of Rome's 14 districts destroyed. The worst fire in history until Hamburg and Dresden in the Second World War. Nero was at his villa in Anzio when it started. When he heard, he jumped on his horse and rode back immediately. For 9 days and nights he worked the fire lines without bodyguards. He slashed grain prices. He opened the temples to house the homeless. He personally oversaw the food distribution. Tacitus, his harshest critic, confirmed every detail. Nero did not start the fire. He did not play the lyre on a balcony watching it burn. He was not even in Rome. But then, he did 2 things that destroyed him. He imposed a fire tax. And he fenced off a section of the devastated city to build himself a palace. Romans had forgiven him for killing his mother. They did not forgive the tax. And so he needed someone to blame. He chose a small religious sect, already deeply unpopular, who believed the world would end in fire. He chose the Christians. They were crucified, fed to wild animals, burned as human torches in his own gardens. Among the dead, a fisherman from Galilee named Peter. The basilica built on the site where he died still stands today. While Rome burned, Nero had a vision. A palace. Not a building. A world. The Domus Aurea, the Golden House, covered approximately 1/4 of the city of Rome. Its entrance was a statue of Nero depicted as a god, 120 feet tall, in gold. The walls were encrusted with gold, precious stones, and pearls. Pipes in the walls and ceilings showered visitors with perfume and flower petals. The central dining room, a rotunda, rotated day and night in synchronization with the stars. When Nero finally moved in, he stood in the entrance and said, "Good. Now I can at last begin to live like a human being." He called it modest. The citizens of Rome, whose homes had just burned, watched this palace rise on the cleared land. 14 centuries later, Renaissance artists were being lowered through holes in its roof to study the paintings. After Nero died, Emperor Vespasian demolished the Golden House, drained its artificial lake. And on the site where Nero's 120-foot golden statue had stood, he built a public entertainment venue. We call it the Colosseum. By 59 AD, Agrippina had lost control of the son she had made emperor. Nero had a new woman, Poppaea, a member of the aristocracy who wanted to be empress. The only obstacle was his mother. Agrippina's response was the response of a woman who had spent 30 years surviving in Rome. She threatened to withdraw her political support from Nero and throw it behind his rival, Britannicus, Claudius's biological son, the heir she had spent 15 years pushing aside. She was going to undo everything and replace Nero with the boy she had already replaced once before. Nero's response was immediate. At a private dinner, Britannicus was handed a cup. He was 14 years old. He was dead before the cup was empty. In front of witnesses, while the Praetorian Guard watched and did nothing. Agrippina had created the replacement. Nero had removed him. The message was clear, and Agrippina understood it completely. She had made a monster, and the monster had learned from her. The Senate didn't overthrow Nero. His army didn't rebel because of ideology. His Praetorian Guard didn't abandon him for principle. Every enemy Nero ever had, he created himself. He forced senators to perform on stage, humiliating the Roman aristocracy publicly. He ordered forced suicides of men who had served him loyally. He went on a year-long artistic tour of Greece, while the empire went ungoverned. He entered 1,800 competitions during that tour, and won first prize in every single one. He had brought 5,000 paid applauders to guarantee it. When he returned, he held a triumph. Not a military triumph, no general had ever done this, an artistic triumph. He paraded through Rome with his competition laurels and his singing medals. To the Roman Senate, this was the final humiliation. To Nero, it was the greatest day of his life. He was his own worst enemy. Not because he was stupid, but because the only thing he had ever wanted was not to be emperor. No one knows exactly when Nero decided to kill his mother, but we know exactly how he did it. He was at the theater one evening. Part of the entertainment was a boat that collapsed on stage, animals running out through the holes. He had one built, specially designed, fitted with a collapsing hull and lead ceiling weights. His mother was invited to dinner. The boat was waiting at the quayside to take her home. Halfway across the bay, the hull gave way. The ceiling collapsed. Agrippina jumped. She swam. A fishing boat found her and brought her safely to shore. When word reached Nero that she had survived, he panicked. He sent assassins to her villa. As they moved toward her, she pointed to the wound that had carried Nero. "Strike me here." They did. When Nero was told she was dead, Tacitus records that he inspected the body. He remarked that she had a beautiful figure. Seneca and Burrus covered it up, inventing a story that Agrippina had tried to kill Nero and died in the attempt. The Senate accepted the story. But both men knew what they had done. They had lost him. There was nothing left to hold. Poppaea Sabina was everything Nero had ever wanted. Aristocratic. Beautiful. Ambitious enough to match him. She had pushed him to kill his mother. To discard Octavia. She had made herself empress. In 65 AD, she was pregnant with their second child. Nero came home late one evening. An argument. He kicked her. She died. What followed is recorded by Suetonius and Cassius Dio, and it is the single most disturbing sequence in the history of the Julio-Claudians. Nero had her body preserved in ice. He had her deified, made a goddess, by the Senate. He searched Rome for a boy who looked like her. He found one. A boy named Sporus. He had him castrated, dressed as Poppaea, and married him in a formal Roman ceremony. Sporus lived with Nero as his wife, called by Poppaea's name, until the day Nero died. There is no defense for this. There is no context that changes what it was. The man who called himself an artist had decided that reality itself could be edited. In June 68 AD, Nero woke in the night to find the palace empty. His Praetorian Guard had gone to a secret Senate meeting. The Senate he had given power to was taking it back. Still in his night clothes, he fled. Not to the port, where he could have sailed to rally loyal forces. Not to his armies. To a freedman's villa. For miles outside Rome. A messenger arrived. Nero had been declared an enemy of the state, sentenced to death in the ancient manor. He asked what the ancient manor was. A slave told him, stripped naked, head clamped in a forked branch, paraded through the streets, stoned to death. He dug his own grave. He wept. He kept saying, "What an artist, what an artist." When the soldiers arrived, with the help of a slave, he stabbed himself through the throat. His last words. Qualis artifex perio. What an artist dies in me. He was 30 years and 6 months old. The last of the Julio-Claudian dynasty that had begun with Augustus. The Senate declared a public holiday. His successor Vespasian demolished the Golden House, drained the artificial lake, and on the site where the 120-foot golden statue of Nero as a god had stood, he built the Colosseum. The most visited monument in the world today exists to erase a man's memory. Nero saw himself as an artist. His enemies saw a tyrant. History recorded a monster. The truth is he was all three. And none of them fully. He was a 16-year-old boy handed the known world by a mother who wanted to rule through him, inside a system designed to corrupt whoever held it, with no one who loved him enough to tell him the truth. What comes next is not an emperor who burned his city. What comes next is the year the empire itself nearly broke. For emperors, 1 year. None of them lasted. Rome's dark throne. Every empire has secrets.